name is Michelle Walling, and I'm here with a special guest today, Michael Lee Hill. Now, Michael is an award-winning musician, filmographer, and UFO experiencer, and he is known mostly in the past for his footage of Lake Erie UFOs, which created a buzz in the disclosure genre. It landed him on the local news and on the History Channel's UFO Hunters, and he began to really realize that he had an intuitive relationship with these craft. Now, we're going to learn a lot more about Michael Lee Hill. He's also a speaker at our upcoming July 15th Cosmic Awakening Show Live Detroit taping, and that'll be in Detroit, Michigan at the Holiday Inn. You can find out how to join us live and meet Michael at cosmicawakeningshow.com. That's how you can get the tickets, and I'll put the link down below. Michael Lee Hill, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me.
Awesome. Well, I've been wanting to talk to you for several months now. You've been very busy. You speak at a lot of different conferences. You got a lot of stuff going on. You've got these amazing necklaces that you've learned to. You're a musician, so you've learned to retune your guitar and create these necklaces based on that. Can you tell us a little bit about these necklaces?
Well, it was part of my contact with those that are not from here. The Anunnaki, most know them by. By the way, that's our name for them. They told me that's not what they call themselves. We call their planet Nibiru. They call it the Sa'amai. And the people of the Sa'amai are the Sa'am. And in the Western, like translated into Western in English, they would be called the Sam, S-A-M. But our English word for them is Anunnaki, which means those from the heavens that came down to the earth or something like that. So their guidance to me, they started guiding me into what I call the most cosmic harmonious frequencies. Once you understand that sacred geometry is creating our physical experience from the atom to galaxies, are all adhering to like what's called Fibonacci sequences and the golden mean and so on and so forth. Well, if geometry creates physical creation and we start to understand that frequency creates geometry, then it's probably pretty important to start looking into what frequencies create perfect sacred geometry. What we're finding out is 432 hertz is the magic number. And it's only 8 cents below. It's interesting. A Nazi scientist took us into an A equals 440 hertz musical standard back in the 1940s. And you find out it's actually one of the least harmonious frequencies. And why we even know this is there's new scientific technology called cymatics, which is the science of making frequency visible. And it's evolved to really, they have a big, large vat of water and they pump frequency through it with a high-tech camera. So 432 is the magic number, and I'm a musician, so I made sure my guitar was tuned properly to A equals 432 hertz. And I sent it to the scientists, they're called Cymascope, and I hired them to image my guitar. It's just one note, I'm just hitting it. And the images kind of became historical. And Nassim Harriman took it under his wing and spread it through his resonance project. And the scientists themselves said, we've used this technology to image everything. We've used it to image dolphin noises, every frequency known to man. But they said we never imaged an electric rock guitar amp before. And they said the complexity and the dimensionality of the image, the cymatic image that was created, is unlike anything they've ever seen before. And so that's the story of how that happened. But the 432 subject is a very important subject because using that same exact scientific technology, if you run a 440 hertz pulse through it, it doesn't create any geometry at all. It looks like a puddle of water.
Interesting.
Yes.
There are a lot of cymatics and work done out there by scientists, especially like Dr. Emoto. But he did harmonious, let's see, what did he, snowflakes. He froze water into snowflakes under certain conditions of hate and love and things like that. Yes, so indeed. This is all proven science. And So I'm going to put a picture of this up on the YouTube as well. But the pattern is absolutely beautiful, and that is very interesting. That it actually has no pattern, just puddle, at 440. That's a very small tweak in order to get such a great frequency out of that.
Yeah, it's almost like you've taken a focus on a camera and just backed it off a little bit, and everything comes into sharp focus. And why this is important is, with the contact with the Anunnaki, I started to realize some people, because of ancient aliens and whatnot, they might be hip to the fact that mankind came right out of the gate in Sumeria with like full functioning culture, with no predecessor. And our systems of timekeeping, mathematics, government, everything were formed right in Sumeria. Well, our system of timekeeping, all you got to do is get out your calculator and look at how many seconds is in 12 hours. It's 43,200. Some of the Sumerian king list, succession of kingship, were 432,000 years. The actual octaves of 432, which is 216 and 108, when we say, because here's the deal, everyone knows E equals mc squared. Well, E is energy, m is mass, and c is the speed of light squared. Scientists now tell us that everything is both particle and wave. Well, that's only the particle part of the equation. It's right there, m equals mass. So where's the frequency component? What you find out is 432 squared is the speed of light, c within Einstein's equation, within 1% accuracy. So the only frequencies that are truly components of light are 432 based frequencies, because that becomes c squared times mass equals energy. They've been gifting us the keys to unlimited free energy, and this has been happening for a long time. And what we're going to get into as well is, they had a hybrid bloodline on this planet known as the Nephilim. What's about to be revealed in a big way, I just met with Graham Hancock, and we can get into that, but his next book is on the Mound Builders. And what you find out is the Nephilim came into North America long ago, and the reason why this is even relevant is they encoded 432 base mathematics and frequency information into the actual layout and design of these mound sites like Newark, Ohio, Cahokia. There's hundreds of sites actually. They encoded, it's almost like they've been giving us little hints along the way and waiting for us to wake up. And for me, this gets into something we were talking about, of this bad connotation of the Anunnaki being these bad guys.
Yeah,
it's
we need to talk about that, Michael.
Yeah, because
my listeners must know me well enough by now to know that I would not have anyone on here that's here to spread disinformation or here to to lead anybody down the wrong path. And I do feel like, because of a disinformation campaign out there against the Anunnaki, and good cop, bad cop type things going on, we really need to get into, on this show, who the Anunnaki really are and how they're connected to you. And then in live, we're going to talk about deeper aspects of that. Live, we're going to talk about how that plays into the shift that's happening on the planet. But if you could give us an overview, please, about who the Anunnaki really are and how they are truly here to help races of humans who have been stuck in a certain frequency and understanding actually move out of that or ascend.
Indeed. Well, I think exactly what we're talking about here, and I do want to announce something right now. The fact that they've been trying to guide us into frequencies that are in alignment with the frequencies of creation and actual light. it should, to me, it should alleviate a little bit of the fear. And when you find out that the Anunnaki have been intertwined in human history for a very long time, like Carmen Bolter, the woman who did the Pyramid Code, I'm friends with her, and she's about ready to reveal they found a huge sprawling complex under, it's called the Labyrinth in Egypt. And this is a site 60 feet under the sand that covers acres, and some of the rooms are the size of grocery stores. And then you'll go through a small hallway and you'll enter into another room that's like the size of a small, like an Olympic swimming pool. But there's so many rooms that she said if you took out the hallways from one to the other, that you'd have over 1.5 miles of hallway just to walk through to get from each room to each room. And they have it imaged with new quantum computing based ground penetrating radar. And she said this is so sophisticated, the radar system, that it can tell the difference between metals, do perfect 3D mapping of whatever was there. She said they know that all these rooms are filled with gold and artifacts. But here's the kicker, that's only a 60 foot. At 110 foot, there's a whole nother level that mirrors the 60 foot level. All of this is going to be revealed to the future, slightly into the future here. And in the same manner, many people might know in the early 1900s, the only thing sticking above the sand of the Sphinx in Egypt was its head. They had to excavate all the sand around it, and there's a body. Well, in the same way, they know now, using the same ground-penetrating radar, that there's hundreds of pyramids still under the sand in Egypt, and those ones haven't had the outer casings ripped off of them like we did to the ones in Egypt that we know of. Humanity has never seen a pyramid in its pristine condition, and it's about ready to happen. So the question is, well, who are these people? This is where the Anunnaki comes into the story, and if they've been here in history, in human history's past, I think when people understand they've been here for a long time, if they meant us harm, we would have been harmed. We wouldn't even be talking right now if that was their intent. So the question is, well, what happened to this culture that made the pyramids and made these sacred sites all over the planet? Well, all the facts are pointing now that they created a hybrid bloodline, which I am. It's called the Nephilim, and it comes in through the Native American Indian culture only. People can Google haplogroup X2A. This bloodline does not exist anywhere today other than the Native American Indians. So when people say the Nephilim are behind all these skull and bones and oil banking cabal and the Illuminati, and they're the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, controlling humanity, it's like, what does that have to do with Native American Indians? I'll tell you what, nothing. The Indians...
You were on the History Channel where they actually took your blood
yes.
and showed that you had this anomaly of more oxygen in your blood and didn't have normal human blood.
Yeah, that was funny. It was the last day of that film shoot in Boston. It was a Harvard professor, too, It's like, it is what it is. Some people accuse me. They're like, oh, you got delusions of grandeur. And, I'm like, hey, man, I don't have the ability to negate what this Harvard professor told me. You might think this is me just making stuff up, but watch the show, just watch it. But the last day of the production in the hospital there in Boston is when they told me, yeah, you have this blood anomaly as well, and your plane's waiting for you, see ya. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't a TV show to me anymore. What are you talking about that I don't have normal human blood? And the Harvard professor, his name's David Systrom, goes, what do you think unknown means? We don't know what to tell you. I was like, oh, all right, great. But I just want to say something to get back to the 432 image. I'm so excited about this show you're putting together in Detroit. And I would like to offer anyone that comes to the show, just come up and introduce yourself to me, and I will give you a absolutely free one of my 432 hertz necklaces. I saw $40 on my website. I really believe in what you're doing, and let's spread a little light. Come and see me, and I'll hand you one for free.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Michael. That's
Right on.
what I mean. Yeah, you can, you basically almost getting in for free. That's great because you're leaving with something as well, and you're going to leave with some good vibes as well. Um, if we could get into, I think most people who have gone down the rabbit hole of the Anunnaki know about Anu and his two sons, Enki and Enlil, that bloodline, and
I just met Enlil, by the way. Whole nother story, but
yeah, I've
in the flesh too. I'm not talking channeling or anything.
So, and actually, you're an aspect of Enki's oversoul. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. You know what? When I met the Anunnaki in 2008, there was no Ancient Aliens on TV, and uh,
You met them because you had interaction. You started having telepathic kind of conversations with the ships, and they would move and do stuff over Lake Erie when you lived in Ohio on the shores. And they were
yeah,
just talk. They were just like they were sentient. You know, you were like, oh my God, they can understand what I'm saying.
yeah, they proved to me they knew I was there,
Mm-hmm.
and we. So they met me at a festival. At that time, like I said, I didn't even know what an Anunnaki was, and I was invited to go to this festival in New York. It's called Sirius Rising. Well, now I know they're the Syrians. It's like, duh,
Yeah.
At that time, I thought I was going camping. I didn't even know like what was I was in store for. But when I got there, I was greeted by some beings, and they have a way of letting you know you're not dealing with a normal human by they're not shapeshifters like people think, but they have enough chi or prana that they can send an image into your own neural network to make you perceive, what in this case they became faceless in front of me. They said, we want to talk to you about this blood issue that it was just revealed on the History Channel, that truly you just revealed to the world an indicator that you are part of our hybrid bloodline on this planet that was known as the Nephilim. I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, I know, but you will. Sure enough, I've got a crash course. So this is in 2008. They told me I was once known as this being named Ea.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, like I said, if I didn't know who the Anunnaki was, I sure as heck didn't know what Ea was, or they told me I was known as Ea the Water Bearer. I'm like, a water bearer? What's that about? But over the last 8 years, they have pushed the point home to me through synchronicity and divine coincidence, and I'm talking. It's what happened last year. I was invited to a Native American Indian Sundance, and everything. It was like an 8-year cycle, and everything that they told me came to fruition, and they proved it without a shadow of a doubt to me. And then if spirit goes through such lengths to give you some bit of knowledge, I've learned to listen. And I've heard kind of what it is you start paying attention to synchronicity. The more you pay attention, it grows to the point that all doubt's taken away, that something is in communication with you.
I think they
Um,
gave you a very gentle awakening, Michael.
they
They could have been a lot, more forceful, but they've allowed you your free will to take it as you could handle it.
almost told me, in this, that it said we can just point you to the way. You have to remember yourself. We can't make you remember.
As a Nephilim hybrid, um, obviously the work I do spiritually is to bring more of my higher self into the physical body so that I can carry a vibration to help humanity move as a collective out of one frequency into another reality, out of such a strong opposing um, dark versus light, and more of a peaceful existence. So do you think that Enki or Ea, that he's called by both names, do you think he's actually waiting to move more into your body physically?
Um, yes, actually, I did get a message from the elders, and a dear friend of mine who is a physical incarnation of Galzu, and I'll tell you what, if you ever hear anyone speak about the Anunnaki and they don't bring up Galzu, you'll never understand the Anunnaki mythos without understanding who Galzu is. Galzu was not Anunnaki. He was a representative sent from all that is and was Pleiadian. But anyhow,
So you think so? There's some preparation that needs to go on physically in order for your body to hold that kind of vibration. Have they
what
been
he
telling you
said,
about that?
yes, he said, we have a message from Spirit. This was Galzu, that Ea is coming down more into your human vessel, but what's keeping the merging at bay is your own self-judgment. Chief Golden Light Eagle, he said, Michael, you're too judgmental. And at first I thought he meant that I was judgmental towards others. I'm like, wow, I have a low patience for just self-inflicted suffering. You know what I mean? It's like, won't you stop doing that? But I'm thinking, I don't really perceive myself to be judgmental in that way. Then this other message just came that, no, you're saying you're self-judgmental.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I am pretty hard on myself.
It's just a programming. It starts with when we were kids and we were sat in front of the cartoons, and then we sat in front of television. It's totally part of the programming, and it's really easy to break. And as you know, spending a lot of time outside in nature really does work in breaking a lot of that programming and grounding and stuff. So let's talk about good cop, bad cop with the Anunnaki. And let's just explain. We haven't finished this part about who they are and how they are catalysts in providing, everything, the dark, the light, the good, the bad, everything is created by Source. And and we were kind of stagnant here on the earth, weren't we?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And boy, again, this is going to get into I'm going to try to keep it in a nutshell, but they came here to mine gold, and this was a do or die situation for the Anunnaki because they used it in a powder form called monoatomic gold, and it'd make their DNA fire on all cylinders, and they had prolonged life and whatnot. But they also would powderize it and put it into the atmosphere to shield their planet from the sun's solar radiation and whatnot when they came through our part of the neighborhood. So they seen that gold was very prevalent on the earth. So like 400,000 years ago, they set up mining operations. And what had happened was the Anunnaki who came here to mine the gold were known as the heroes. And this was because it started to be viewed as a death sentence for them, because many people might have seen Matthew McConaughey's movie Interstellar, where they got into the concept of, Einstein's twins paradox. He said if one twin gets in a spaceship and leaves his other twin on Earth, and he flies near the speed of light for 5 years, when he returns, his brother will have died 500 years ago. That Einstein said the faster you travel through the ether, your actual perception of time changes. So the way to think of this is each brother, the one that's still back on the Earth and the one that's in the spaceship, if they're both wearing a wristwatch, they're both clicking 1 second equals 1 second. To them, there's no problem until they try to come back and enter each other's timelines again. Well, as crazy as this sounds, like jet airplanes, they're going to put an atomic clock on an airplane and a ground-based counterpart, and when the jet plane lands, there'll be a few milliseconds off from one another, just so at a couple hundreds of miles an hour faster that the plane's going. So what we need to understand, and what the Anunnaki was getting a good lesson in, is all the planets have different rates of speed through the ether. Time is actually perceived differently on what planet you go to as compared with the other ones. And the NSA people I worked with said that, there's a Stargate in Pine Gap, Australia base, and you can walk through that Stargate, and right now you could walk through one door on one side and exit the other side, and you'll be on Mars. But that right now on Mars, if you try to communicate back to the Earth, it'll be Earth's 1950s.
Wow.
Yeah, it hurts your head, don't it? But so the problem was that the Anunnaki who came here, when they went back to their planet, their loved ones had aged differently than they had and whatnot. And they actually decided that they weren't going to do it. It wasn't easy work. It was totally being in service to the home world. But they looked at it as a death sentence, and they were going to go on strike. And Anu had been getting the armies together. They were going to go into civil war, and this was a do-or-die situation for their culture. So first of all, I want to hit another misconception. Oh, they go around creating slave labor. That's not what happened at all. It was Enki who said, trying to figure out a way to stop their own race from going into civil war. He said, well, there's no indigenous life form on this planet that's capable of helping us with the toil and labor of this mining operation. From what I understand, Homo sapien, before it was genetically tweaked, was at the stage that we would think of like a chimpanzee, right at the verge of self-awareness and that level of consciousness. So as much as you love a chimpanzee, go and see if you can get some of them to help you mine gold. It's not going to work out. So Enki said, what if we jump-started their evolution and we tweaked our own genetics with theirs and up-started their consciousness, awareness, so we could get some help? And actually, that worked. And it averted their civil war. Mankind was brought into, the Sumerian word is Eden. And truly, people want to say we're created as slave labor. From what I understand, what I've been told, we're more like pampered pets. We were brought into Eden. It was a very Edenic life. You know, we were well taken care of. There was no starvation, no homeless. But what had happened was the Anunnaki scientists seen, this was 27,000 years ago, which the biblical flood or pole shift is what actually happened. They seen this was going to happen, and it was decided by the Anunnaki that, well, it must be God's will. We're going to let mankind perish. And that didn't sit well with Enki, because his brother, Enlil, had gotten the throne and was known as Yahweh in the Bible, by the way. And as the story goes, he never looked favorably upon mankind in the first place. He considered us so much of a lower life form. They're multidimensional, can become anything, both biological or technological, which actually we can get into Robert Bigelow as well, because they know this as well by studying the Skinwalker Ranch for the last 20 years. They contacted me and said, we know that what you're in contact with is the real deal because we've been studying it. And so over the Skinwalker Ranch, they're called the Skinwalkers by the Native American Indians there because these orbs of light would come down and take on the form of like a giant wolf or a giant deer or anything. But the Bigelow investigator, Gary Hernandez, that contacted me, he pointed me to the UK Ministry of Defense declassified documents, and they said the real deal is these plasma orbs of light, and in using some system that we don't know of, 3 of them can come together and create a giant triangular craft. So what Bigelow is getting to, and remember, he just was on 60 Minutes. He said there's been an extraterrestrial presence on this planet for a very long time. It's right under our noses. Oh my gosh, wow, I think was his exact words. John Alexander was a senator that arranged for Bigelow to get all the UFO reports from the FAA, and Bigelow Aerospace makes space station modules for the powers that be, and they're the only ones that are authorized to bring weapons into space. And that was worked out by John Alexander. Well, John Alexander was brought to the Skinwalker Ranch by Robert Bigelow and was allowed to stay for a couple weeks. And in a recent interview, they said, has Bigelow and you come to the conclusion of what is the intelligence behind the phenomenon? He said, yes, we have. We've learned it's definitely in charge and is more complex than we've ever dreamed. And we know we are up against the trickster. Well, it's Anunnaki, you know? So the point is, people sometimes think of the Anunnaki as these rebellious space teenagers going around going, hey, let's have sex with some of those females we made, When you start to understand this intelligence is multidimensional and it can become anything, biological or technological, anywhere in time. The Bigelow investigator said, these are not UFOs in the ways that people think usually of, like it's made out of metal and nuts and bolts. He said these orbs of light have more to do with portals and time travel. What had happened in this is, even though Ea was Anu's firstborn son, he was half-blood because his mother was Pleiadian. And a lot of people don't know, Pleiadians are like, the whole New Age movement looks at Pleiadians as
all
these
love
angelic, all loving, and
yeah.
They don't even know the Pleiadian side is through half of the Anunnaki family tree.
I know, but Barbara Marciniak actually had literally come out with that in her book Bringers of the Dawn and the other book Earth. She actually said that the Anunnaki were of the Pleiadian family.
Yes.
But I promise you, when I read the book the first time, somehow that went in one ear and out the other, and I never remembered that part out of the book. I think you only learn that when you're ready to hear it.
Understood. I guess that's why we're bringing it up now. But what had happened was, since he was a half-blood, further down the timeline, Anu severed that relationship with the Pleiadian queen and took on an Anunnaki wife, and they had another child, and that child's name became Enlil. Which those are names. It's confusing, man, because Enlil's a title and Enki is a title.
Right,
and
they're titles. They're not.
Yeah, they're not names.
Yeah.
And this is more confusing because I don't know Enlil's true name, because I, up until this point, thought it was Yahweh, and I just learned Yahweh is a title as well. The throne didn't go to Ea because he was a half-blood. Just like a lot of civilizations, they had this cultural thing that a pureblood gets the throne over a half-blood. Mm-hmm. So the throne went to Enlil instead of Ea. Mm-hmm. And Enlil didn't look favorably upon mankind anyhow. Looked at us as lower life forms, and it was said he even hated the sound of us when we made love. It like annoyed him. Like, noisy humans, So he said it must be God's will, And here's another thing: this misconception, and I see it from a lot of researchers, that the Anunnaki caused the flood. That's not what is in the Sumerian tablets. It said this is a cyclical event. Poles will shift again. It happens a lot, like I think it's about every 13,000 years. It said that when the ice caps reach maturity and the Earth is off axis anyhow, a little tilt, they want to relocate to the equator. It's just physics. Matter of fact, Einstein did a preface to a book called Path of the Pole by Charles Hapgood, which was all on crustal displacement. So they didn't cause the flood. The pole shift had happened many times in the past, and it's going to happen in the future. Enlil let it happen, but that's not the same as them causing it. So I just want to bring that up as a misconception anyhow. So Enlil says, well, this must be God's will anyhow, because their technology they had, he said 400 million humans on the planet at this time. And by the way, we were talking this Edenic state that mankind lived with in harmony with the Anunnaki up until this point. Well, it was told to Ea to go out and remove the fish from the oceans to take back to the homeworld, Nibiru, because why put this energy into fish and food sustenance for humans when they're going to die anyhow? So let's just let them starve, and we would like you to remove the fish for our people back on the homeworld. Well, Enki went out and he found himself not being able to follow orders. I almost look at this as Ea's ascension, Enki's ascension, because he went against, his brother was king, and he went against his orders, and instead of removing the fish, he went to his mother's side, the Pleiadians, and said, isn't there anything that can be done? My race is going to let this beautiful race perish that has so much potential. And they said, well, let's think tank it. And the whole idea of the ark, Noah, that came out, and it's actually way in more detail back in the Sumerian tablets than the Bible, by the way. But so they said, well, even if we save this race of yours, let's use our time technology to see if they're going to have time to break through their own shadow collective mass consciousness work in a time before the end of this grand cycle, which was 2016, not 2012, by the way. That's a whole other subject. The answer was no. They could see that we were so pampered and had no catalyst for change. Everything was taken care of for us, that we weren't evolving at a very fast rate. We were stagnant, as you said. So they said, well, why even save them if they're going to self-implode at the end of the cycle anyhow, and just not grow spiritually as they are technologically, and and they said, what else can we do? And it was think tanked again, and Ea came up with another idea, and he said, what if we made them experience their own mental energy reflected back to them in an accelerated way, unbiasedly? Put out light, you get back light magnified. Put out darkness, you get back darkness. And theoretically, you're like, wow, that might make them burn through their shadow work faster and give them a chance to, because that stuff needs to be transmuted. The Anunnaki understand that thoughts have an electromagnetic reality. We're beaming. Thoughts have frequency. And that if there's frequency, there's energy. And as we know, energy can't be created or destroyed. It needs to be transmuted. So no one's really asked the question, well, how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, you live it. It comes up in your own personal reality for you to choose love over fear, and it will transmute those energies into the higher octave of that thought form. And if you don't, the same crap keeps coming up in your life over and over again. You go, why does this keep happening to me? It's the same situation, but it's different people, but the same thing is happening. And it's because those energies of those negative thought forms have not been transmuted. So they said, why don't we then flip out into two different groups? One will reflect back a negative polarity. And it's almost like the agents in the Matrix, they look out, and if they see someone vibrating fear, they'll make sure you get the chance to experience your own dark thought form up close in the flesh and personal. And again, the hopes are, from the higher perspective, that you'll change it, that you'll go, no, that, find another way, and that's what I learned is I've trained myself to say, thank you for showing me what I got fear on. Now, what else is available? What they said is the first thought forms, we're all connected to the mass consciousness. The first thoughts that pop in our head are always from the mass consciousness. Right now, that mass consciousness is filled with a lot of fear and doubt. And so usually the first thought forms are fear and doubt-filled thoughts. And if you don't look for something else and you accept it, you will own it, and your reality will manifest from the mass consciousness. So they said, truly, make mankind experience its own thought forms in an accelerated fashion, and we'll divide into two teams. One will whisper in their ear and teach them about sacred geometry and sound, and things that enlighten the human soul and lead mankind into the higher realms. But the other side, Team Bad Cop, is going to reflect back a negative polarity that, and I can tell you, if you're a human that has a lot of fear and doubt and garbage in your belief system, and you come up against a multidimensional being whose purpose it is to make you experience your own thought forms, you're going to go demon. Mm-hmm. So what the whole thing with the Anunnaki, it seems like everyone right now is focusing on Team Bad Cop and not realizing there's always been a Team Good Cop. But it was so, these two teams, when they came here, they took it very seriously to prove the dark was going, we can prove every human can be made to go dark side and give their power away to an illusionary outside source by dangling these carrots in front of them. And whereas Team Light, is going, no, they have more potential than that. And what the Team Light does, in my understanding, is their job is to see how much love and compassion you bring to any suffering that comes your way. The dark is seeing if you will self-inflict suffering upon yourself through your own free will and give your I am and not step into your sovereignty.
Well, when we move in frequency, we are able to manifest almost instantly what you're thinking.
Yes.
That's the power. It's a power that some of the Nephilim and Anunnaki have, is instant manifestation, and even manifesting things out of the 0 point energy or background energy. Something out of nothing.
Yes, indeed. That's the thing too, because they say at the end of the cycle, the Earth's magnetic field goes down to almost zero before the magnetic field flips. And they told me that, the time between the thought and the manifestation of thought is tied to the Earth's magnetic field. Like the higher the magnetic field, the more there is of a time lag between the thought and the manifestation. And they have to have an energetic handshake for it to manifest. So let's say with a really high magnetic field, you put out a dark thought form, that person's an idiot. Yeah, I hope they get sick. Then the next day you're like, you know what? Joe's not that bad, And so then when the thought comes back around, they won't have that energetic handshake and it won't manifest. But as the magnetic field grows thinner and thinner, our thoughts are manifested faster and faster, and you don't have time to change your mind. So if you have a lot of shadow work still left to do and you enter this time at the end of the cycle where thoughts are manifesting instantly, it's not a good combo. So they were trying to help us as much as possible to weed through humanity's mass consciousness shadow work to give us, and they told me we've made it. What they told me is this experiment of good cop, bad cop, and accelerating human conscious evolution by making us experience our own light and dark thought forms accelerated would end the very second we entered the age of Aquarius. And they would have mankind would have made it or not, and we made it. They said the second we entered the age of Aquarius, Team Bad Cop would all flip out, and they call them event strings. Like these, everyone, your audience, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but it becomes evident that certain synchronicities are being set up behind the scenes. They call them event strings, and certain event strings have a lot of potential for manifesting. If you don't catch it one time, it'll come around in another way. Some not so much, but so the whole good cop, bad cop, I hope that explained that. But how this revolves around the Nephilim and why they were created is when Enki went to his mother's side, and this idea of this experiment to make humanity experience its own thought forms in an accelerated fashion, it had never been tried, even in a galactic version. They said, well, listen, you can't just do this to an upcoming race when it's never been tried before unless you're willing to go through it yourself. You need to walk a mile in their moccasins, incarnate as one of them. That's how you earn the right to try to help, is you become it. Right at birth, through their DNA, you take on, and plus they told us we had to have, because truly, as part of this experiment, a lot of people might know, actually there's a really good show on this, on the Ancient Aliens. It's called The Mysterious Nine, or the Council of Nine. What you find out is, once Yahweh revealed himself to me, and this again in the flesh, this isn't channeling or anything, he said, Michael, I work with the 7 Lords of Light, the 7 Lords of Darkness. And I'm the only one that sits in the middle, and I hold a seat on both sides. And I'm the only one who holds a seat on both sides. So what you find out is, if there's a council of 7 and a council of 7, light and dark, but he holds a seat on each side, that only keeps 6 members on each side, right? Mm-hmm. When you follow the math. That's the council of 12 that so many people know about. So if you talk about the council of 7, that's accurate. If you call it the Council of 12, that's accurate. But then this mysterious Council of 9, I'm watching, I'm going, I know this is the council that I was just brought before. And the Ancient Aliens show said this is the council that has been overseeing human conscious evolution for a very long time. And I said, why is it 9 when Yahweh told me it's the council of 7? And by the way, that is the 7th tablet in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. It's called the 7 Lords, and it explains all of this perfectly for your listeners. But what I found out is in the Council of 9, there's 7 seen members and 2 unseen. So even the Council of 9 is the same as the Council of 7, and the Council of 12. It all depends on what you're saying. But that was all put together as part of the council that would see how humanity was doing in this experiment.
And this experiment was created as one of the fastest oversoul growth experiments ever in the universe.
Even to them, when I met them in 2008, they said humanity wouldn't understand. We perceive time differently than you do. He said the only way a human would be able to understand what has happened, that if we were doing an experiment with chimpanzees and we're trying to raise the animals' awareness, consciousness, but we had a 2-week vacation coming up. So we went on our 2-week vacation, and when we returned, our chimpanzees had created government and churches and rock concerts and culture, and they're like, holy moly. Like, they said, we don't understand it because we're in it. But they said even as much as we've evolved from the 1950s till now, I know it looks pretty ugly out there, but we as humans, in 1950s, we wouldn't allow a black person to drink out of the same water fountain or sit at the front of the bus. And, humans have done a lot of shedding those prejudice. And I know there's still a lot of prejudice and xenophobia and whatnot, but we are doing a lot better than we give ourselves credit for. And they said we don't even realize how fast we're evolving, but that gains a galactic presence because we're all one, right? So instead, truly, in the bigger scheme of things, something new happening in the multiverse is something to be excited about. And when we evolve, mankind, and I was told also this is the first time in this whole time cycle that mankind is going to go through this ascension process. And so as we head back Godward and evolve back into source, it changes everything because we're evolving at a rate that's unheard of in the multiverse because of this experiment of good cop, bad cop, and accelerating human conscious evolution by making a mass consciousness experience its own thoughts. Unbiasedly, they said, they're pretty horrified at how dark mankind took it. Which, like we were talking about, people get pissed at me, but I'm like, don't confuse the work of the Anunnaki with the works of man. All the atrocities of man has been one human that misused their... Now, I'm not saying someone wasn't whispering in their ear. That's what they do. It is really the angel on one side and the devil whispering on the other shoulder. Which one are you going to listen to? Or the white wolf, black wolf, Indian. Do you know that one?
No, but I do wonder just how did it get so extreme and stagnated? Obviously, we've had our memory wiped when we incarnated as to that we are an aspect of Source, and that was all part of the experiment of Source. If I send aspects of myself out as far down into the lower frequencies as possible, will they ever remember who they are and start to come back? Or how will they remember who they are?
What they told me is the only... Indigenous humans have not had their memory wiped. It was only the Anunnaki who came in because to represent mankind before the council, you couldn't come at any higher vibratory level than humanity. So it's pretty much risking it all because you're absolutely right. They said upon birth we had memory blocks installed because we wouldn't be able to represent humanity in the form we were. We had to come and walk a mile in these moccasins, and if we didn't allow the darkness to overcome us and we could awaken, then we could change it from behind the scenes, so to speak, and bring on the golden age. So the only mind wiping was part of the plan of Enki's side, Anunnaki, to incarnate into the Nephilim and be able to represent, because here's another thing I found out. No one knows who each other are in these incarnations. They didn't know I was even though once you come in here, no one gets a free ride. No one knows who each other are, and everyone gets put through team good cop, bad cop vetting. And so I just wanted to say that the indigenous humans that are here do not have memory blocks. It was the ones that came here to help it. And so that was, by the way, they removed my memory blocks in 2008, which was a shock to me because I'm thinking, first of all, I didn't know I had memory blocks. My next thought was, well, how the hell is blocked memories going to surface back into my psyche without me going insane? But I can tell you in these 8 years, at that time, I was adopted. I didn't know of my Native American Indian heritage. I hadn't met the Anunnaki. It has truly been a crash course of remembering in these 8 years. And it is after they removed the memory blocks. But it's like the memory blocks are or the hidden blocked memories that I had are coming into my reality through the revealing of what is truth anyhow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I wonder, how does Earth's consciousness fit into this, where there's the story that, when she lowered her vibration to allow this Earth experiment to happen, and to allow this extreme reflection, this mirror, back to humanity, so that they could transmute energies and stuff. But how there's this story about a call for help from her out to the universe, that it was really falling deep and it had been stuck in a low vibration consciousness for a long time. How does Earth fit into this picture?
Well, Gaia, Mother Earth, it's almost like you can't separate humanity from that intelligence that is Gaia, because the human meat modem, that's a bad term, human smoothie suit is animated Earth. Everything that makes up on an atomic level the human body is Earth material. The human body is animated Earth. So it's intertwined at every level, and Gaia is a sentient being, and I really wish mankind would show her much more love and quit bleeding Mother Earth bone dry, and it's for greed, because there's free energy technology that's waiting in the wings to be, we don't need oil and be taking her blood. And, this is why what's going to be happening is the revealing of what's called the Rainbow Warrior Prophecy, where these class of people would rise that through their own actions would show that they're more interested in helping humanity than their own wallets, and they would make Earth green again, because it's the Native American Indians that know how to live in harmony with Mother Earth, and their ancient wisdom is going to be returning in a big way, because the reality of this race that made the pyramids and became the mound builders is going to be in the forefront starting next year. Like I said, Graham Hancock's new book is all on the mound builders, and I just met him at Serpent Mound. And for the Star Knowledge family, Chief Golden Light Eagle and whatnot, I've been brought in as the mound builder representative. I'm Iroquois on my mother's side in Erie, Montauk, my father's. So this whole idea of, plus, this gets weird, but I'm not Christian in any typical sense, that I'm not religious. But when I said look into haplogroup X2A, the only 3 places on the planet this is 3% of the Native American Indians still have haplogroup X2A. I am haplogroup X2A. But not a lot of Indians have had their blood work done, so the numbers could be much higher. But know of at least 3%. But go back a little bit in the past, and the skeletal remains, the giants that have been removed out of these earth mounds, earthworks, like in Newark and Serpent Mound, they were giants, and they were anywhere in stature from 9 to about 15 feet tall. And those are also haplogroup X2A, which is an interesting talking point right there, because there's no doubt that my race of people not too long ago were giant statured, and now we're not. So something's been happening. I think it could very well explain what's happening with abductions, that the genetic work hasn't never stopped. You know, we were our stature reduced, so we didn't stick out like a sore thumb. But anyhow, go
Well,
back even.
where's your higher aspect? Where is Enki right now? Is he on Nibiru? Is he did he create a spaceship for himself to as his home base? Is he inside the planet?
Um, a good question. Because I heard, the Anunnaki in their native state, not this incarnated into the human Nephilim, they are tall statured, and like in the halls of Amenti and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, said that they are lying in sleep, and if they perceive time so differently than we do, imagine that one dream in their night is one incarnation here on this planet for 80 years or whatever. And they have 12 pineal glands, so they can have 12 simultaneous incarnations happening on this planet at any time while they sleep for one night. So,
Wow. But have you been told I
know.
guess your oversoul of Enki obviously is so large. It's most of it's not even anywhere near here, but there has to be a larger part of it that is actually connected to you. The rest of it's connected to the oversoul, and that's connected to source. But is there?
I have no clue on that, but I do know where my ship is.
That's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, what's interesting is I was just led to locate a intact earth mound here in my hometown that no one here. I was raised here and I didn't know. And this mound is so large that it takes a mile to walk around it. And this is going to be revealed. Oh, what I wanted to get into is this haplogroup X2A. When you follow any haplogroup back in time and you find where the largest concentration of it is, that's where the home base was in the past, and it's the hills of Galilee. This is the lost tribe of Israel. It is the Holy Grail, Sangreal. It is that bloodline. And the Templars, when they persecuted and they brought the lost tribe here, they became known as the mound builders in the past, because that was 10,500 years ago is when they were the Atlanteans, is what's going to come out. And they, even the first, they went up into the bottom of the North American continent and they met the Mayans. The Mayans are like, this big white dude, Cody Quetzal, showed up and showed us how to make these temples and, the Mayan calendar and whatnot. But see, this is anything we're talking about. You need to understand this experiment of good cop, bad cop, and conscious acceleration experiment was put into place 27,000 years ago. So when we're talking about the Mayans, this experiment had been going on for a very long time, and darkness was really stepping in through the human psyche, to explore those avenues, I guess. But so, when all of a sudden the Mayans are like, well, we think we got to start sacrificing people, to make them happy. And they're like, well, I don't think they're getting it. Let's keep on going north. They went straight up through the middle of the North American continent, becoming what's known as the Mound Builders, until they dead-ended at Lake Erie, East Lake, Ohio. That's what I'm revealing to the world at your conference and in August at the Serpent Mound. And I got all the data to back this up. Actually, one of the Templars wrote this story in the actual street names of this area. It's Lost Nation. Take Lost Nation Road until it dead ends at Lake Erie, and you take a left. Within 1 mile, you're at the first site of the Mound Builders ever.
So just to summarize what you said, what you're talking about, at the time of the flood, Enki actually gave some of the humans an incarnated Nephilim warning that the flood was coming, and they came across and went different places. Some went to Egypt, and some went to southern France, and the Templars worked with them, the Essenes worked with them, and they kept the hidden history and knowledge, and a lot of them came over to Ohio. Is that correct?
Yes.
And over time, the Native Americans became that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they have the knowledge about what's happening. And 2012 wasn't the true end of the Mayan calendar. 2016 was.
Yeah, because you know what? It occurred to me as we got into the 432 subject, and our whole basis of timekeeping is based on 432. They gave us this idea of dividing and multiplying whole units by 12, whether it's 12 inches in a foot, 12 hours in a day, 12 apostles, 12, 12, 12, 12. If you take 432 and divide it by 12, you get a perfect 36. 36 is 9. Tesla said once we understood the magnificence of the 3, the 6, and the 9, we'd unlock a key to the universe. Well, what you find out is all 432 based frequencies and numbers, which our timekeeping is even based on, they all resolve to 9. 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 9. Its lower octave is 216. 2, 1, and 6 is 9. 108, 9. The lower octave is 54. That's 9. 27, 9. And like I said, when you take whole numbers and multiply it by 12, you get 432. The point is, all 432 base numbers resolve to a 9, and their system, their whole calendar and method of timekeeping is based on 432 mathematics. It's provable because there's 43,200 seconds in 12 hours. Well, I'm sitting there watching the movie 2012, and all of a sudden it hits me. I'm like, that's a 5. That can't be the end of the calendar. It's not their system of timekeeping. So I just looked into the future until I got a 9, and it was December 21st, 2016. And this has been confirmed now through Spirit. Yeah, the accurate date has not been decoded yet. It is. So we just passed into it. So from what I hear, we're right on the verge of the golden age, and that all of Team Bad Cop that was creating event strings for people to experience their own darkness in hopes to change it have all now begun working for the light and creating event strings that it's like people's shadow work still needs to be transmuted. There ain't no way around it. It's how it works. But imagine now that your things that you have shadow work on that maybe you've never even faced because it's too painful for you. Now when you face it, it'll resolve in the most effortless, easy way that it'll work out better than you could have ever imagined, because we have friends in high places that are now going to take mankind into the next golden age, and we're in it. It's just we got to get from A to B.
Well, we've been told that because of the alignment with Earth in the galaxy and in the galaxy to the great central sun and the universe right now, that there's like this opening directly from source sending us these higher vibrational frequencies. And as well, we have Star Family that is beaming these high vibrational frequencies to try to, send a signal to our body to wake up, so our consciousness can begin to change and we can begin to question our reality and get out of this slave programming type mentality that we've been in, and just following orders rather than thinking for ourselves. So as people begin to wake up and they're questioning government and all that, and they're having a really hard time right now economically. It seems like everything is just on the brink of it could if it collapsed, it could be horrible. What are the plans to move us past this economic, this economic challenges, the challenges with government? Every country's got like ridiculous things going on with government. Our education, we've kind of been told lies and things like that. How is this going to play out, and will there be some big huge things happening this year that will help give everyone hope? That things don't have to be, we don't have to be in our lower chakras, our survival mode.
See, for me, the way for mankind to get from reality A, which was what we've been through, and it's dark, to reality B, which is where mankind gets to flourish and relish in its creativity and look into it. Truly, it's the apocalypse. It's the revealing of what was once hidden. And to me, that is revealing, first of all, people are going to find out our founding forefathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they all went and met with the Seneca Iroquois, the mound builders. America is built on ideas and being overseen by this bloodline. People don't know this, but people don't even know, like the Seneca, they own Salamanca. They were never defeated. They own their land in New York, and when you pass through it, that's where Niagara Falls is, by the way. It's the only city not owned by the United States. It's leased to the United States by the Seneca Nation. And in 1999, that treaty was up, and they redrew the treaty, and the Seneca were given $60 million, and they're given $800,000 a year to still use Niagara Falls. Why is that, right? Someone in the higher realms of all this know that they are the Nephilim, and they are here. This whole freaking world they've been overseeing and trying to help us purge these dark thought-based. But some of them were just going, well, let them perish. It was because they wanted to help that we are where we are right now, and we have made it. So
like,
me,
how do you, how do you, what kind of words of hope can you give to people who are truly, it's economically struggling and maybe, struggling by health because of chemtrails and the GMO foods and the poisons that we have in our reality right now? I mean, we didn't manifest that.
Well, a lot of that, though, take your power back. Look into Dr. Emoto, who you showed. They took the most polluted water radiated from China. They had a Tibetan monk come in and give it a blessing of gratitude. And under a microscope, the water was purified and cleansed. No one takes into account, it seems, the effect of consciousness on nutrition. Bless your food. It's that simple.
That's what I tell everybody. It's like you get the superhuman power when you raise your consciousness and stand in the power and sovereignty of who you are.
Yeah.
But economically, I guess, the power of manifestation. But it just really seems like it's always just an uphill battle with the way that, the true 3D humanity program is right now. One person at a time. It's going to take a long time to change that. Is there...
No, I think that take long at all.
Is there any plan to pump some funds into this reality?
Yeah, that's you have a deep connection with the Templars.
Mm-hmm, I do.
That's what the Templar treasure that no one knows where it is. Well, guess what? The Templars brought the Holy Grail bloodline to America to intertwined into the Native American Indians, and they still own their land. Guess where the Templar treasure is? I can guarantee you it's in the Seneca land for the Iroquois. That's where they went. And it's here to free mankind from the banking cabal. And truly, mankind will be freed of any type of this system. We will watch their temples fall. And that's what it's there. It's already, once one domino goes, all the dominoes go, and they will be revealed for who they are. It'll be revealed through people like Bigelow that they know it's the Anunnaki. It's been right under our noses, is his own words.
I can't wait to be a part of it, honestly. I think things are moving really rapidly now towards this, because sometimes it just seems like it can't get much worse to wake people up. It's like if they haven't gotten it by now, that something's wrong. But really, if you go to the grocery store and you kind of strike up a conversation with somebody, or in my case, you go to the beach, there really are people that don't have all the true understanding of our history, but they know something's really wrong, and they want world peace, and they know, that they want to be healed, and they really have an understanding of small awakening, but just not the bigger picture. And you really just to be in your heart and to be compassionate people. Most people are good.
I absolutely believe that, and it's going to come in a way that no one's expecting. First of all, as I told you, I've been to this mountain now, and I can feel what's underneath of it.
Do I need to bring a shovel or what?
I'm telling you, the craziest thought occurred to me that wouldn't it be cool if everyone's expecting first contact to happen from space coming down? Wouldn't it be interesting if all the ships came from the Earth up.
Well, and in
That'd
fact,
be a
the
twist
ships
to the
were
story.
actually going into the water. They go into the water and come out of the water, out of the
Yes.
lake. So,
Yeah.
it's happening all over the planet, and especially off the coast of Sarasota here. There's a Stargate, and ships come and go there all the time. So, hey, speaking of Detroit, though, where we're having our get together, a lot of people are like, Detroit? What are you doing going to Detroit? I just saw a documentary, still on the water situation in Flint and how all of that is just, the water's just absolutely poison there. And as a starseed, I go where places need light. And so I hope that, by joining us there in Detroit, we're able to affect not only all of Michigan, but it circles out to Ohio and Illinois and Canada, all the places that are surround there. We're going to be doing some, a brief meditation to spread light to that area and consciousness, and help bring people out of fear, and by sending a love vibration. So I hope everybody does join me in Detroit. Have you ever been to Detroit before?
Yes, I have. I went to see one of my favorite bands perform there. And bless you, by the way. I think that's what it's about. Like they said, the last incarnation of the Buddha, which, by the way, I was known as Maitreya in past incarnations, and the last incarnation, you don't incarnate again, like and preach to the choir. You incarnate into the darkest pool of darkness you can to be able to help as many as you can. And I see that as what you're doing. It's like a candle burns brightest in the dark. The dark, it's needed what you're fulfilling, and I am so proud to be part of it. And thank you for bringing the light to this area. And I think it'll help big time to bring about some change.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into more of these topics. As far as the shift, several shifts that are going to happen. The Wingmakers, Ty, we're going to be getting into that at the conference as well. I know when I read the fifth interview by Dr. Neruda, the Wingmakers material, I couldn't put it down. I read the whole thing. I read all 4 of the interviews, but then the 5th one was just wow. I just knew that that I had something to do with that. So I think it's exciting as well if people come, talk to us in person, and they maybe get some kind of trigger words from us or some understandings where they can start remembering that they too are a part of this, this whole grand plan. So, well, I think we could probably talk for a couple hours, but I think this is a really good introduction to you. And Frozen Hill is the name of your YouTube channel, where you have a lot of your UFO footage and a lot of interviews over the years of people. You can get, they can go into depth to listen to everything that you know so far, but we're going to be really revealing some more things in Detroit as well.
I look forward to it, and thank you. This has been a nice chat. It's always great talking with you.